Hi guys, this is Miss Raina here, C347, to talk to you about oil spills. This should be a really short video. Pause it wherever you need to make sure that you take good notes. You'll have a quiz over this tomorrow, okay? The first point about oil spills is the worst damage doesn't come from oil spills. The worst news, the biggest news impact comes from oil spills, but really the small leaks and the small indiscretions that people have about throwing away their oil in the gutter when they change their oil at home, things like that. Oil leaks on the roads that wash away every time it rains. Those are the big time contribution to the kind of pollution that oil spills cause. So here's a couple of different types of problems, okay? So floating oil can be a big problem because it'll coat feathers of a bird, sometimes the undercoat of the marine mammal fur. Because of that, they might not be able to insulate themselves and they might not be able to float the way they normally would. So even though they're marine animals, they drown and die of exposure sometimes. Over time, oil is broken down by bacteria, and so what can happen when you have a lot of oil in the water is same thing that can happen sometimes when you have a lot of nutrition in the water. The bacteria population will go nuts and the dissolved oxygen will go way down because the bacteria will be metabolizing all of that extra nutrition from the oil while they're doing their cellular respiration to metabolize all that extra nutrition. They'll use up a lot of the dissolved oxygen in the water and it can create dead zones sometimes. Sometimes there are components in oil or in the kind of sludge that comes out of an oil spill that are heavier than the oil, and so there's the slick part that floats at the top, but there are these heavier components that trickle all the way down to the bottom, and they can start smothering the benthic surface, and they can start poisoning the filter feeders, the slower movers, all of those benthos, the benthic organisms down there. It can be really, really bad if they're in a coral reef, because you and me know the coral reefs are very picky. They need warm water and they need it to be very clear. And as soon as all of this turbidity is introduced, they get into a lot of trouble. A whole coral reef will die. So mechanical methods refers to what can be done about the oil spill. In some cases, people will actually try to go out there with giant vacuum cleaners, basically, and they'll try to they'll try to vacuum up some of that oil slick into big collection containers. In other cases, they'll just put a lot of floaters out there, kind of like the big floating ropes that you see in like a community pool, except these are enormous. And what they're trying to do is block the spread of that oil to keep it from reaching really sensitive breeding grounds or pretty beaches. When the BP oil spill was happening, lots of people were asking you to collect feather pillows, blankets, anything like that, old towels, because people really will take those out onto the water and use them to try to soak up oil. The big thing that they used, the big controversy during the BP oil spill, were these chemical methods of dealing with the dispersing oil. So in some cases, they'll spray this stuff and it'll cause the oil to clump up, sink to the bottom. There, it's gonna go into the benthic surface, but it's not gonna harm any of the nectin and it's not gonna harm any of the algae up above. It's arguable. People argue about the effects that the chemicals have once they're dissolved into the water. The dispersing agents are used not to clump up the oil, but to make it break up. So now it's not blocking the surface of the water from the surface of the air, but this also causes problems for some kinds of organisms. They tend to be really, really, really volatile. Speaking of volatility, that oil floats at the top, and so what people can do is they'll burn it. Once it starts burning, sometimes it's hard to stop, sometimes it's difficult to ignite in the first place, but this is the kind of method that, well, you and me know, burning fossil fuels causes more carbon to be released into the atmosphere, and so with every one of these benefits, there's a cost. So This is the site that you guys looked at today. If for some reason you missed class today, now you know what to Google. You can follow this interactive and click on the different links, and it tells you some really interesting lessons about what we learned during the BP oil spill. All right, that's all for today. Thanks for sticking with me through your notes about oil spills and cleaning up oil slicks. We'll have a quiz on it tomorrow. Good luck, everybody. We'll see you then.